Welcome to Washington, D.C. It's our nation's capital. Did you know that over 680,000 residents of the District of Columbia are disenfranchised because the nation's capital is considered a district and not a state? Did you know that the federal district is treated as if it were a state for hundreds of our nation's laws and has a larger population than Wyoming and Vermont? Did you know that an individual living in D.C. pays more in federal taxes per capita and fights in our nation's wars but is treated differently from every other person in every other state? It all began under the Articles of Confederation, when the federal government was incapable of governing over its own land, unable to protect itself against protesters, and struggled to find a permanent location for the nation's capital. Thus, the framers established the federal district through the ratification of the Constitution. It states that Congress has the power to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may, by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of the government of the United States. George Washington then chose land on the Potomac River in 1790 from Maryland to Virginia to form the federal district. Later, Virginia's portion was retroceded back in 1846 because it was not being used for the purposes of the federal government. The people of Washington, D.C. lack three things: voting equality, legislative and budget autonomy, and self-determination. D.C., like the territories, has no voting representation in Congress, and Congress can govern over the people of the District of Columbia in addition to having oversight over all its laws and budgets. D.C. has achieved several milestones in its fight towards self-determination in the past, including the right to vote in the Electoral College in 1961, the right to vote for a non-voting delegate in 1970, the right to vote for a mayor and a council in 1973, and the right to vote for a shadow congressional delegation in 1981. However, the residents of the district can only vote in the Electoral College unless there is a tie. The non-voting House delegate cannot vote on the House floor. The laws and budgets passed by the D.C. Council and signed by the mayor are subject to congressional oversight, and the Statehood delegation cannot vote on the House or Senate floor either. In 2016, D.C. residents voted on a statehood advisory referendum, which was overwhelmingly favored by 86%. The referendum asked voters if they wanted to become the 51st state by shrinking the size of the federal district to preserve the intentions of the framers of the Constitution. Then, the remaining land and all citizens would be established as a new state to protect the identity of the people of the District of Columbia. The federal district, being maintained as the nation's capital, would encompass federal lands and buildings such as the White House, the Capitol Building, the Jefferson Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Washington Monument. All other non-federal lands and citizens would be considered a new state. Welcome to the 51st state.